Hey friends, it's the end of April, finally. In April, just to remind you, we had countrywide lockdowns, we had over 1 million people get Voldemorted in the United States, and aliens are real. What's gonna happen in May? I'm dreading tomorrow, I'll tell you that much. Anyways, let's not dread putting off the existential question any longer. Let's just get to it, okay? The existential question of the day for today is, what is the point of being bulletproof if nobody shoots you? Okay, it's kind of like a seatbelt, right? Like, the seatbelt's there for the car accident. Somebody being bulletproof is only there if they get shot. Also, most people, if they are bulletproof, would go their entire life without knowing. So if you find out you are bulletproof, are you more likely than inclined to go out into situations where you can get shot?
Just to show off?
Yeah, or like, I guess you're an asset at that point to like a government somewhere, and so you would like go into that line of work? I don't know. Basically, this is a bulletproof story, not just a question that I got going on here. What's the point of being bulletproof if you never get shot? Who's willing to get shot to see if they're bulletproof?
Hey!
As always is the case with hot news, it does seem like if we get a big Navi GPU rumor going out there, Nvidia rumors have to crop up next to them. So we have the latest RTX 3080 Ti rumors, and just to be clear, take these with a huge grain of salt. In fact, maybe go find a salt mine, bathe in it, lather in it, get it in your lungs, kind of like disinfect it, and make sure you're ready to be prepared for this, because the leaker who posted this eventually ended up deleting it because then he was like, I'm not so confident that this was real. Anyways, the original leak is coming from China Times, showing off what the Ampere generation of RTX cards is gonna look like for us, we consumers, and boy howdy were they big. They were bigger than Big Navi. Okay, yesterday we talked about how Big Navi seems to be twice the size of the 5700 XT. It's basically the same going on here for the RTX 3080 Ti, having almost double the amount of CUDA cores of the 2080 Ti. The rumor shows 8,192 CUDA cores, 256 ray tracing cores, which if I can just remind you, the 2080 Ti only has 64 ray tracing cores, which is not a heckin' lot. Then we go all the way down to the GA104, which would be the RTX 3060, and that has 80 ray tracing cores. So the RTX 3060 would be better at ray tracing than the RTX 2080 Ti if all of this stands true. However, there are a couple concerning things about this leak, but there are a couple things that like Dodoy, like obviously this would happen. Number one, the Dodoy VRAM speed, 16 gigabits per second. Nvidia is already upgrading their Super Series to have 16 gigabit memory, so it would stand to reason that is what we're going to get on the next generation cards. Maybe the 3080 Ti could have 18 gigabits if they squeeze it out, but again, then you're looking at a $1,200 card still. On top of that, clock speeds don't look too outrageous. The RTX 3080 does seem to be in the 2 gigahertz region. The big thing that I would be concerned about is the RTX 3070 is within 15% of a 2080 Ti, which if there's any IPC improvement, if there's any sort of clock speed bump, that would make the RTX 3070 close to being on par with the 2080 Ti. And I think Nvidia is moving away from that, of like bumping up 2 steps. I think 3080 being a 2080 Ti is where we're headed, rather than a 3070 being a 2080 Ti. So we'll hold on to that. Also, another suspect thing is the 7 nanometer architecture that they're talking about. There's been a lot of indication that Nvidia is actually going to be going with 10 nanometers on Samsung. However, if they do decide to stick with TSMC, 7 nanometers would make sense there. But the big thing that is kind of weird is that the 3080 Ti is on the GA100 chip. That would be very out of character for Nvidia to do that, considering that TU102 is the 2080 Ti. They typically reserve the 100 chip for their Teslas and their big server boys, not for anything consumer. Even the Titans are on the 102 chip, not the 100 chip. This would be weird if the GA100 is indeed the 3080 Ti. So again, take it with a huge grain of salt. I saw this posted on multitudes of websites, which is why I decided to talk about it in hot news. Hold your horses on that. Maybe don't necessarily start thinking 3080 Ti double the performance of a 2080 Ti for the same price. That would be phenomenal. That would punch Big Navi in the face, would make AMD yet again not really all that important in the GPU generation as far as power goes. They're good at value, not good at power. Anyways, there's some actual weird stuff going on with RTX voice though. It appears, at least based on this one Reddit post that I found, so take this with a grain of salt. I don't have enough information to confirm that this is happening, but somebody ran CUDA profiling on the RTX Voice app, and it appears that RTX Voice is using an unreleased version of CUDA, CUDA 11. The last time CUDA was upgraded to CUDA 10 was when Turing dropped. So if the RTX Voice beta, which is I think like beta 0.6 version, is using CUDA 11, which is not yet released, so we're only on the subset that's still compatible with CUDA 10 cards, this could make sense as to why, one, it's an RTX only feature. They're actually making it compatible for CUDA 10, but it will be CUDA 11 when it comes out, so only RTX cards are going to be fully optimized for that. But then also, two, that could mean that a new generation of cards is coming, because the last time they upgraded was when the last generation of cards dropped. So CUDA 11. Nvidia has already said that May 14th we're getting something. We should get amped. So Ampere being released, CUDA 11 being released with that, RTX Voice being used with CUDA 11, kind of cool. Now let's shift gears over to Intel, which until like right before we started filming Hot News was complete rumor, but now it's real. Intel 10th gen, yay, it's real. Guess what? Only motherboard reviews are out because you can't review the chips yet. What the heck? Anyways, that's not the point. Intel released a whole bunch of slides. We got up to 5.3 gigahertz on the 10 core, 10900K. You got a whole bunch of goodness. It does look like it's just Coffee Lake with 2 extra cores is the general idea. It's on the LGA 1200 socket. You have to get a Z490 if you want to use these chips. It will not work on your Z390 because you can't deliver enough power to it because it just suckles that power. So on top of that, we got the pricing for these chips, but not the retail pricing. We got the RCP per 1,000 units. This is also what Intel did with the 9th gen. They announced this, and then we found out the pricing is actually higher. The i9 10900K coming in at $488 RCP per 10,000 units, so we could expect a retail price of $500 or maybe a little bit more. So $500 puts it in line with the 3900X, has less cores, worse multi-core score, better single core score, but 3900X is a better value since it's regularly on sale for $420 to $440. Intel's not going to put this on sale. 10700K, $374 RCP, which would then put it in the $400-ish price point, which makes it more expensive than AMD's Ryzen 7 37 and 3800X lineup. Then you're looking at apples to apples. The 10700K is going to be better in single core. The 3800X will likely be roughly on par in multi-core, but considering the price difference, the 10700K is not going to make a whole lot of sense. Truth be told, there's a lot of new CPUs that are being unveiled. Honestly, this is a generation that probably could get a skip from you if you are an Intel fanboy and want to buy it. However, I will say I love the new box. The 9900K retail box, phenomenal. This one, more minimalistic, but still very beautiful. Intel, good job on your box art, because you're doing better. I mean, once AMD started coming out with fancy Threadripper packaging, that's when I noticed Intel stepped up their game. And boy, howdy, definitely love it. Reece, have you seen it?
I like that.
You'll have to wait until the actual reviews come out for the chips. You will see reviews for the motherboards, which is kind of bullcrap, because how do you review a Z490 motherboard without the CPU? Because the CPU that you can only use in it is not your 9900K. You have to use 10 series in order to even use the freaking motherboard. And a lot of the motherboard's performance is based on how well it handles the gosh dang chips, but you're not allowed to talk about the performance on the chips. It's ridiculous. It's a weird multi-layered embargo release that's happening. The 30th today is the announcement of the CPUs and the unveiling of the motherboards. So we have companies like ASRock and Asus, all of their boards have been released. MSI's, all of those are out now. But then the performance of the chips is not till later, and then the retail of the chips is even further past that. So this is a huge paper launch. We were supposed to get a sample of a Z490 motherboard. We were supposed to have it 2 weeks ago. We still don't have it. We were supposed to get an Intel chip with that. We still don't have it. So what is this launch? With that, there's also a slide that came out from Asus comparing the 10900K to the 3950X, which 3950X, obviously $750 price tag, 50% more cost than the 10-core 10900K, but then has 60% more cores, and we see that that definitely comes across in performance. 10900K beats the 3950X in single-core Cinebench, but the 3950X beats the 10900K in multi-core score. There you go. Z490 boards, all out there. It's all there. But let's talk about a chip chip that's not officially out yet, and that's the Ryzen 3 3100, because there are leaked benchmarks coming out about this chip and showing that it can hit a 4.5 gigahertz all-core overclock, which is quite admirable. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that at that clock speed it's going to be on par with the 3300X, because in a previous episode of Hot News this week we talked about the fact that the 3100 has 2 cores on 2 different CCXs, so that's how they get the 4-core, whereas the 3300X has lower latency because all 4 cores are on a singular CCX. But you can have DisplayPort and USB on a singular cable now with the VESA updating and their Type-C devices, so it's gonna drive displays even better. So you can get 80 gigabit per second DisplayPort pass-through, which is just crazy. It can handle up to 8K 60 hertz full color, 444 HDR uncompressed, and 16K 60 hertz 444 HDR with compression. 16K! Speaking of new standards being released, AV1 is gonna be a new standard that's likely gonna be coming out to a lot of streaming services near you. It's a new codec that allows streaming stuff to happen, that gives you basically the same quality for a lower bit rate. However, one of the things, it's very intense to encode. However, it's not so bad on the decode. MediaTek announcing its first SoC with AV1 hardware acceleration. Kind of cool. And then talking about something that probably has already been more fully announced by the time you guys are watching this episode of Hot News, but got announced yesterday. Assassin's Creed Valhalla has now been confirmed. We talked about this a while ago, that Valhalla was going to be the new one. It does appear that we're going to have more details sometime soon. I read somewhere that they're betting that it's going to come out October 9th because it's Leif Erikson Day. Possibility there. Norse version, Assassin's Creed. There's going to be more details by the time this episode of Hot News is out, so go check other sites for that. But another game that people are looking forward to, especially Catlin, is Nier Replicant is getting a remaster, and it's been announced that it's going to have a new combat system as well as other upgrades on top of the visual remastering. So it's actually going to be a modern remaster as opposed to just a visual remaster, which is kind of cool. And EK is updating their mounting brackets for their pumps to include offset so that it doesn't have to be directly in the fan thing. So in case you wanted that, it's now a thing. But in case you want Google to launch yet another project after killing off Project Shoelace, well, boy howdy, I got the news for you. They're gonna be launching Google Meet, like meat together, not like, they're not gonna be serving up beef or pork at your local rotisserie. Okay, it's basically supposed to compete with Skype and Zoom. It's gonna allow up to 100 people in a call together. However, I just have to ask, what the hell happened to Google Hangouts and what the hell happened to Google Duo? Because those were supposed to kind of be the same thing. It's gonna be free. What, I guess trust Google with your data over Zoom? Sure. I thought this already, what's Google Hangouts if it's not that? Why new thing? Why new thing? Why? Speaking of Voldemort stuff causing people to like rechange their life, wearing a face mask has caused a lot of headaches when it comes to Face ID on Apple phones. However, they are now releasing a new beta update that allows you to, once it detects that you're wearing a mask, it will automatically bring you to the passcode screen instead of having to like try to be like, why I can't Face ID you, passcode. Now it's gonna be like, oh, mask, passcode. And then yesterday we had the Tesla Q1 earnings call, which boy howdy, if you like controversy, we're not going to talk about it very detailedly, but geez, Elon Musk going ham, talking about how the states are basically violating people's rights, forcing them to stay at home. It's like an authoritarian state. He dropped an F-bomb. He said stuff about goddamn freedom. I'm sorry, I thought this was America. It was a heckin' Q1 earnings call, but we did get some key details about Tesla cars. That's what we're going to be talking about here, and that's number one, full self-driving, which typically is a $7,000 additional purchase for Tesla vehicles, is apparently going to be rolled out as a subscription service, which is kind of weird because it's $7,000. So unless it's like a non-contract one where it's just like, hey, I only want it this month because I know I'm going to be doing a lot of highway driving. So I'll pay $100 and I can do Autopilot this month, but I know next month I'm going to be staying at home. You turn it off then. I could understand that. Or it could be like a loan towards the $7,000 price, which then why didn't you get it when you got the car? Maybe you decide after the fact, but then you don't have the money outright. And so I don't know the specifics. So we'll have to see if that happens. But also on top of that, Tesla did announce that they're going to be delaying the semi truck until 2021. So the date which was supposed to happen this year, is getting slipped. I didn't hear any news about the Roadster's date being slipped as well. That still should be this year, maybe. But what is happening this year is people are using webcams like never before, and Canon's trying to make that easier than ever, considering that their typical Canon cameras are terrible on HDMI out to cam link because they have crazy interfaces. It's garbage. You have to buy like one of their cheap camcorders to make it work, and you can't typically do it on one of their lower end Canon DSLRs unless you got Magic Lantern. Anyways, they now have an EOS software that makes it so that you can use it as a webcam. Yeah, no, don't use Canon if you're going to be doing any sort of like video calling stuff. Get a Sony. Get a cheap Sony RX something, or potentially even getting a Sony like a6000 for $400. Add a nice lens on top of that for another $300 to $400. $800 out the door. You have a solid. I'm talking more live streaming stuff. Like obviously this doesn't work for phone calls, but if you're using a DSLR for your webcam, like maybe like we're not talking about replacing your freaking C920. We're talking about like making things look good. But Lyft not looking good because they have laid off 1,000 employees, which accounts for 17% of its workforce, and it's furloughing another 288 workers. This is on top of the fact that executives are taking a 30% pay cut, vice presidents are taking a 20% pay cut, and Lyft will reduce pay by 10% for all other exempt employees. Makes a lot of sense, a lot of less people traveling around, so not as much ride sharing going on, therefore not as much money coming into the company where they're able to actually fund all of their employees. But can we just remind you that employees for Lyft is not the drivers, because they're not employees. They're drivers. They're independent contractors. But I'm independently contracting my brain to make it smaller because I don't want this information. I don't want this next story. I don't like it. I want my brain to be smaller so it can't retain it.
What is the segue?
The segue is talking about TikTok has crossed 2 billion downloads. 2 billion downloads! And they said, self-reportedly, that it is the #1 quarter for any app ever, coming in at 315 million downloads in Q1. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. But you know what I do like? Steam. Like actual steam, like hot water being vaporized, right? Well, I want it to make my toast. And thankfully, if I'm willing to shell out $329, I can buy this Japanese Balmuda steam-based toaster. You pour water into the toaster and then it heats your bread with steam power. Apparently, it makes phenomenal toast, very even, very nicely crunchy crunch. It probably won't give you the superb burns that you're used to from the coils in your normal pleb toaster, but the Japanese expensive toaster now coming to the US on Amazon. Get your wallets ready for that, and get your mind ready to talk about being bulletproof. What's the point? Nobody's shooting you. What's the point of having toast if it's not made from steam as well? I just gotta, we need questions answered here at UFD Tech. Anyways, that's the end of this episode of Hot News. That's the end of April. Yikes. What a year this month has been. Crazy stuff going on. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.